Hi there. I just heard the local church bell tolling for a funeral and reminded that, as they say, in the midst of life we are in death, but in the midst of life we are potentially in the midst of Gnosis as well. It is as if we are about to have a Gnostic experience of the truth. And I wanted to present this. I sort of had this come to me last night. It's a bit complicated, but it's based on the three pillars of the Kabbalah, which, here you have the pillar of severity on the left and pillar of mercy on the right, and you have the middle pillar in the middle. And in the midst of life, we are in the throes or thralls, I should say, of false beliefs of one sort or another. But we also have great creativity as human beings. And we also have the potential for meaningful perception, which is on the right-hand side, the pillar of mercy. And, this is all happening in and it is of the world, meaningful perception, creativity, and the false beliefs. Starting on the left, of course, from the false beliefs, we have various thoughts arising from those beliefs. And these thoughts could be overwhelming or negative. They are ruminations based on the beliefs that we have. For example, that I'm no good. And you have thoughts about being no good in this world. And then from these thoughts arise emotions, reactive feelings of frustration and anger, and it's not fair, and feelings of betrayal in some form or another. And from these feelings arise certain behaviors. We act out or act on the feelings, which are based on the thoughts, which are based on the beliefs. And these could be self-sabotaging, self-harming. They're definitely obsessive, and they are harmful in our environment and antisocial, or could be antisocial. And when we are obsessed with these overwhelming thoughts and feelings, certain behaviors will arise, which only, of course, reinforce our obsessions and even reinforce our beliefs. So there's a kind of vicious cycle, feedback loop, a negative algorithm which is created over the years. And it's funny how these thought patterns actually arise, and you don't even know you've got them. Even if you have insight into the idea of negative thought forms and negative thoughts, you don't actually have any awareness that they exist. You think it's all other people that have these obsessions and feelings and thoughts of negativity. You don't realize it applies to you. At least that's what I found anyway. But on the other hand, from these obsessions can very often arise a creativity if you manage to find something creative in which to channel all your false beliefs and thoughts and feelings, to give them some kind of fantasy expression, and to be creative with that on one hand. But also, you've got to learn to be creative with countering false beliefs with the truth, so that, and also letting go of thoughts as they arise, and especially of ruminating on thoughts. And then you also got to let go of find some way of counteracting the feelings which may arise from the residue thoughts that you have, by relaxation techniques and other things like that, distraction techniques. And certainly creativity can be a great distraction from ruminating on thoughts which might be self-sabotaging. So you have this creativity, which is the middle pillar, which is a great outburst of energy. And it can be artistic creativity. Your creativity can be based on scientific or technological innovation. science and technology are very creative. Uh, Mothers, necessity is the mother of all invention. But invention itself can be incredibly creative, and people find incredibly creative solutions to problems. But of course, they often give rise to more problems, of course, which we'll come into in a moment. And lastly, of course, forgetting business. People can be very creative in business, and they can be, well, apart from being first or doing something better than their competitors, or even cheating, which obviously you shouldn't do. But apart from those three elements of business, you can be literally just very creative, and and have the right product at the right time, and know the right people, and everything to go with the flow of the zeitgeist, and have the finger on the button of your time. And then business can be great after that, be creative, and fantastic, as long as, of course, you don't hanker after the rewards of business, which can often become the very things that pin you down as well. And you can become obsessed, of course, by certain business algorithms and patterns, and not be flexible to the times you're living in. You can also be very inflexible as far as creativity is concerned, and do everything the same way as you did it before, because it feels safe. You don't want to go outside your comfort zone. And of course, for scientific and technological solutions, you can also become very stultified by the various scientific and technological institutions, which have a sort of throttling effect on creativity. So that's something to watch as well. But on the positive side, and there is a positive side to living in this world, and everything that of this world has this positivity as well, apart from creativity, is meaningful perception. And it is here that we see the seeds of Gnosis actually being sown in the mind. Um, but at any rate, you begin to see reality as it is, in a phenomenological sort of way. The glass is on the table, and it is what it is. And you can also develop compassion and altruism, and you can also assert your reasonable needs. So you can ask of society or of other people or communities to fulfill those reasonable needs that you have, that you express, that you make known to people. People are not, are not mind readers, or at least most people are not mind readers, and they don't know what your needs are. But when they do, and to the best of their ability, they satisfy those needs, then a bit of satisfaction and even self-actualization can arise from the assertion of your needs, and also from compassion and altruism, which is satisfying the needs of others rather than your own, and the healthy perception of reality as it is, rather than how we wish it to be. So we're moving away from beliefs and false beliefs, which tinge our perception, to being incredibly open-minded about everything. And it may be that from this pillar, as well as from the creative pillar, that gnosis can arise. But before we get to that, of course, we have to say that everything that fulfills you and satisfies you, of course, pertains to the quality, the quality of impermanence, as the Buddha would say. And this can lead to dissatisfaction and obsession. So obsession can be a sort of a result of trying to obtain satisfaction on all levels and not attaining it, because you cannot attain it in this world. And from this obsession, though, can arise creativity. It's the motive force for creativity. So we see a sort of loop arising from here. And so from impermanence, we get the sort of motive force to look for solutions which are more permanent than the one you had before. But it is a bit like a hamster on the wheel, though. And ultimately, even with the cultivation of practical energy, which we see resulting from creativity and from scientific and technological exploration and from artistic and also, from business exploration or exploration through business. We can also see that that also pertains to the quality of impermanence as well. Yet I do think that even in this world, Gnosis can arise. It can rise on the intuitive world. So we're in world here now, and we're going to this box, the Gnostic box. And indeed, from this world, you can have what Descartes called clear and distinct ideas arising, which is basically the whole of this picture that I've painted here, and the whole of this lecture that I've presented. That comes from a clear and distinct idea. It's not exactly intellectualism, as in the classical sense of intellectualism. It's a sort of introspection and a contemplation and a wisdom arising from that, and possibly a categorization, a sort of belief that it's good to categorize everything in a sort of kind of an informal sort of way, which is what I've done here. And you can have an idea of Gnosticism on the intellectual level. But of course, ultimately, you need to cultivate the intuitive experiential level. But I think that arises spontaneously from having clear and distinct ideas, and you can become insightful of what Descartes called the trademark of God, which in our case is the awareness of soul, which is our rainbow bridge, of course, to the ineffable and to the transcendental God. So that's the soul is our transcendental quality, which we have clear and distinct ideas about, which arises from a certain amount of intellectualization or introspection, and then you have an intuitive experience of Gnosis, of knowing. Whereas we can see that from false beliefs, negativity arises, or is the end result. Whereas from creativity, it's the activation of practical energy. And whereas at the end result of our meaningful perception, we can derive self-actualization and satisfaction, even if on a temporary basis. The end result of Gnosis is to have an experience of the ineffable, as one might say, the experience of really what is to come, which is the wow, the wham, and the wonderful. And you would be astonished, as it says in the Gospel of Thomas, about the things that it is possible to experience once you have transcended this world. But as I say, Gnosis happens in world, okay? It's not of this world, but it does happen in this world, and that's what's pretty remarkable about this entire situation. That whereas in this world we're like hamsters on wheels, various wheels within wheels, and we jump from one wheel to the next and we just keep revolving round. Total transcendence from this situation, from this sort of repeat and rinse repeat situation, is a genuine experience of future transcendence. And the experience of future transcendence, the experience of future transcendence, is what either prepares you for future transcendental experience, or in fact initiates it and sees it through all the way to the end. So what happens in this world, our experience of Gnosis in this world, can actually be the causative factor that propels us into a realm which utterly transcends everything that we experience here and now. But as I said before in another video, we do take our creativity with us. You know, we even we see some of our beliefs crystallized into reality. Not all of them. Most of them are dissipated, but some of them are crystallized. And we see we see meaningful perception growing, and we can experience a meaningful perception on a dimension which is other than this one. So I hope that I have briefly shown that the essence of Gnosis, and how we can go from complexity, which is what life is, the three pillars is complexity, to simplicity, which is Gnosis itself. And I suppose I perceive this complexity. I categorize the various elements and create a complex picture as I have done here. But ultimately, this complexity is whittled away until simplicity remains. And that is the experiential part or focus of Gnosticism, of the Gnosis, and part of the cultivation of the intuitive side of things, which is important. So you need the intellect, you need intellectualization on one hand, but you also need to cultivate the intuitive on the other. And I would actually suggest that there are various connections between intuition on one hand and intellect on the other. And you do often find, especially with scientists, that they're incredibly emotional, intuitive people, and they have an incredible balance of analysis, and leaps of cognition on the other hand. So they have solve and coagula, you know, in the alchemical sense. They can analyze, divide, but they can also build, and they also see things in a non-analytical way as well. And they take great leaps of cognition, which is what Olaf Stapleton called the various paradigm shifts that can occur even in this world. But as far as we are concerned, what is our focus, or focus of Gnostics, I might say, is the experience of what is to come, or what we are building, which is a pathway or a bridge to the ineffable worlds, where the true God exists. And I might briefly here talk about another video that might come up, talking about the false beliefs versus truth. And often people will have the assertion that God exists. But in order to make that assertion, you have to first define what you mean by the verb to exist. And that's one thing. But the other thing is that, and maybe you could also say that being exists. But when we think about Gnosis on the sort of cognitive level, we can also assert that non-being exists. Okay, and I'll sort of leave it at that for you to ponder on non-being exists, because if non-being exists, then our definition of to exist is itself transcended, I would suggest, and pertains to a dimension which is utterly other than the one we actually perceive and work with at the moment, which is extraordinary, which points to a future which is incredibly blessed, I would say, and incredibly interesting, and where facts and meaning sort of come together, and we live in a dimension which is so meaningful that it actually sort of condenses out. So in this world, think about it alchemically, everything is being distilled, but in the next world, everything will be condensed, and that which we think cannot be condensed will be condensed, and that which we think cannot be distilled will be distilled. And certain alchemical processes which are impossible in this dimension will become child's play in the next dimension. And that's a kind of very interesting future, that Gnostics tend to want to belong to or experience. So, anyway, I hope this has given you some rather interesting thoughts to juggle with, especially the non-being exists. I like that one. That kind of messes with my head in a rather great sort of way. And if non-being exists, and if we could understand that, maybe it's possible to experience that very energy. But this is only just speculation on my part. I don't have any evidence to present to you in support of that. And none of the, Gnosis is sort of beyond evidence and argument, really. It's also beyond faith and belief. It's also beyond personality and ego and psychology. It's beyond creativity, although it pertains to it, and it's also beyond the meaningful perception of this particular world. Um, okay, I do get a bit carried away with all this, and I think I better shut up now and go into a meaningful silence.